All right, we are live. We are live, and I'm coming live. Welcome again to another episode of Gavin Reshaw Presents here on my channel, GBoot2786. Whoever you are, wherever you are, I hope you are blessed and doing safe. I'm about to pop up. Guys, we of course have it's Random Topics Thursdays, and of course, there we go. There I am. Um, my green screen usually works, but I don't know what's going on with StreamYard. I've had some issues with it. So that's neither here nor there, but we're joined by my friend and author, Shawn James. Shawn James, of course, is the author of the John Haynes series. He's also the author of books such as The Man Crisis, Eternal Night. He also has a book called Why Are 70% of Black Women Single? If I'm not mistaken, is that the title? I misread
That
it.
is that is the title.
Okay. Did you? I'm just curious when you did that. How did the women in your family, just curious, take that?
Some of them were upset, but I didn't really care because women really needed to know the truth as related to what was keeping them from progressing and moving forward in their relationships. Because a lot of women out here, they think that the reason they're single is because of the men, but the real reason is because they are outside of God's natural order. So that's what I wanted the women to understand, that they were following a paradigm of failure, and get them back on track to something, to God's natural order, where they can have success in relationships.
Yeah, most definitely. I have not gotten that book because I've had you on frequently, brother, and of course, some of my girlfriend was even asking me like, I don't think he likes women.
Oh, I,
I was like, yeah,
oh, I
I
like women, but I
well,
have standards.
yeah, well, I don't. Well, let me be clear. I don't think she was implying that you were anything but a straight heterosexual male, but I guess and I shouldn't have named her, but friend, when I say girlfriends, I mean friend, and a few others. I think people think that you are, you, I don't know if the word misogynist would be appropriate, but I don't get that from you. I just think that you're a straight talker with no chaser.
Yeah, I love women, but I love them enough to tell them the truth.
Right. Northern Bell says hello. Okay, my Bell, how you doing?
Hello.
Uh, Let's see, we got three people on Facebook. We got people on YouTube. Hopefully, my girl didn't hear me say all of that, but no. But I enjoy having Shawn on because I'm about supporting our fellow Black brothers and sisters, especially our Black YouTubers. We're going to talk, and I've of course have been censored on a social media platform. In particular, I won't name this bitch ass platform, but we could call it Twitter. And of course, with these social media outlets now, especially, I've noticed that they have become more fascist. You know, these are, you look at Facebook, you look at Instagram. Hell, if you look at Twitter, Shawn, they put pornography on there.
I've
You-
been on there for some time now,
Yeah,
and as a member of the comic book community, we have been complaining about that for years. And I remember back in 2016, 2017, when I was subbed to a channel at the time was called Diversity in Comics. It was talking about how these far leftists have practically taken over social media. And when it comes down to these far leftists, they really want to try to censor anybody who has a difference of opinion than theirs. So usually many people who have opposing views, what they do is understand that you can't really fight with these platforms, because the only way you can deal with them is to walk away from them. Because if you take foot traffic away from the website, then they start to crash. Because the only reason why these people are acting like this and trying to censor people is because they believe they have the leverage as related to controlling the narrative on these platforms. But what they don't understand is we ultimately have the power over these platforms. And if we just simply stop using them, what will happen is this website will start to lose foot traffic. And then what will happen is the website will eventually crash, the same way MySpace fell. And these people can be dealt with, but a lot of people just don't have the resolve, because what they believe is we're dependent on social media. but we're not dependent on social media. I mean, as a guy who came from the old message board days, I understand that you can always go to another website if these people are acting crazy like this. So I don't get too upset because I know that there are other platforms out here that are open about free speech, and I'm sub to several of them. I mean, there's BitChute, there's MeWe, there's Parlor, there's a whole host of other social media platforms you can go to. I mean, you may not get the traffic early on, but if you have the following, people will come back to you because on the internet, content is king. And what many companies like your social media don't understand is people go where the content is.
Right, most definitely. And they go to where the content is. And if you have a following, I've learned this too. If you got people that will follow you, then you're going to make bread. Or I should say, you're going to be, you're going to make bread. You're going to be okay because your people, the people will feed you
Yeah,
in your time of need. Those that love you, those that support you, they're going to be there for you regardless. I have this posted here. That's the FTC. They actually have sued Facebook for illegal monopolization, basically setting up a monopoly. And this is in coalition with 46 other states,
yeah,
um, including Louisiana, the District of Columbia, and Guam. And Facebook, of course, they censored the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I have gotten copyright strikes on Facebook. I've noticed that since I have picked up traffic. I've also noticed, uh, on YouTube, I've gotten some strikes. My simulcast of
yeah.
Minister Farrakhan's The Criterion was actually struck down for hate speech. Yet, when I appealed it, they could not tell me what exactly was the hate speech.
Well, that's the whole thing. You have a
And
lot of you have what they call SJWs working at places like YouTube and Facebook, and if they don't like what they're hearing, what they'll see is say it's hate speech because they hate hearing the truths presented in that speech. So they just are very arbitrary with the way they hand out these strikes. And again, the best way to deal with them is to just move to another platform because again, it's all about the content on these
right,
websites, and if you have no content, the website starts to decline. And I saw that happen with Tumblr. Tumblr decided they didn't want to put what they called adult content on there and they wanted to start censoring people. So a lot of the artists and creative people practically abandoned that platform. And now Tumblr has fallen into obscurity. But what
yeah,
I also noticed is that there's a cycle to these websites, and we're nearing the end of that cycle because every 10 years we start to see these websites go into decline. It happened about 10 years ago with AOL, Yahoo, and MySpace. And I remember them being the predecessors to Facebook,
Facebook,
YouTube,
right,
and Google. So
right,
every 10 years, what happens is these websites start to get full of themselves, these owners start to get arrogant. And what people do is say, look, I have power because I'm the one driving the foot traffic to these websites. And if these websites want to start showing themselves to me, I don't have to use them. So all I have to do is close my account, click out, and move on and move to another platform because there are competing platforms. And what some of these companies do by alienating people is actually create their own competition. I remember when Patreon was pushing people off of their platform, and that led to the rise of Subscribestar, and it also led to the rise of other alternate payment sites because when people feel like they can't get services from one website, all that does is lead to another company opening up online and then taking advantage of that market and taking advantage of that market share. So all these guys are doing is imploding themselves and creating their own competition, and they don't know it because they're so caught up in their feelings about their woke agenda and their identity politics that they don't understand that you need dollars to maintain your business, and you need to keep making money in order to be able to sustain your operation. So they cut off their nose to spite their face, not
hmm.
understanding that they're leading to their own demise long term.
So, do you see, in regards to that, because you talked about a life cycle for 10 years, do you see Twitter and Facebook falling? You
Yes,
see YouTube falling out?
yes,
Right,
I do.
because Google, well, Google owns YouTube, if I'm not mistaken. And I remember when Google came up, uh, I want to say it was the early 2000s,
Yeah.
like mid to early 2000s. You could find videos on YouTube now uh, that were posted. Now you can't do it anymore. If you search for a video, everything goes to YouTube, uh, or Vimeo. That may be a default that's there. I have a Patreon account. Unfortunately, I haven't used much of it, but I don't get a lot of support. And part of the reason why I'm not getting a lot of support, uh, YouTube and even Facebook, they shadow ban many, people like you. They shadow ban people like me, black men who stand up for themselves, and who black heterosexual men, I should
Yeah.
say, who have bass in their voice.
Yep.
I've noticed that those are the ones that are always targeted, and that's why the ones that are always pushing for the ones that are pushed out there, like your who's the Lee Daniels and your Billy Porters and others, the one, that's why they get all the opportunities right now. And they certainly don't like it when black men speak up. And I've noticed that my brother Dennis Sperlin, who you've been on his platform, he talked about that, how our black men, the black heterosexual men, are attacked. And my suspension on Twitter, because I showed it earlier, you guys that were looking, that's what those three tweets is what got me put in Twitter jail. Basically, I was responding to a suspected white supremacist when it comes to this Bill Cosby thing. They always, for whatever reason, keep trying to bring up the fact that, well, he was a rapist. He was a rapist, when the facts say otherwise. He was not convicted for rape. Al
Yeah.
Capone's never Al Capone never did time for murder. Neither did Bugsy Siegel.
Nope.
Al Capone is a convicted income tax evader, not a murderer or gangster. Even though we knew he was a gangster, even though we knew Bugsy Siegel was a gangster and a murderer, they never did time for it. They got acquitted and beat those charges. And you can be acquitted of charges and be guilty, and vice versa. You can be guilty of something and be innocent at the same time. Uh, in this case with Cosby, and I wanted to get into that also, Shawn, because I saw your video on it. I thought it was an excellent analysis. You actually saw, I believe, the Supreme Court's hearing on that, but I
Yeah.
want of Pennsylvania. But I wanted to, so I do want to talk about that. But that's just the type of thing we're fighting right now, and so that's why it's important when you guys look at the ticker at the bottom that I have. If you go to the ticker, donate to the Cash App, please. Gavin Reshaw Esquire. Google Pay gavin.grich1@gmail.com if you want to continue to support me, because my goal, essentially, what I would love to do, and you and I've talked to you briefly about this, Shawn, but I want to create a media. I think I don't want to say too much because, well, I'm a target anyway, but I want to create a media empire. I want to create an outlet where we own our not only our own network, control our images, we control what is shown on television, because we want to show our kids that things like this can be done. That you can't just give us, a few breadcrumbs, and then we're going to go away and be happy with it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we do have to start working on getting our own media, because when I look at places like Twitter and Facebook, I mean, for them, they will sit there and defend not only white supremacists, but they also black bootlicks, and anybody who disagrees with them. What they do is they try to either have you blocked or have you banned. And it shows us that these platforms are not really open to heterosexual black men or heterosexual black men presenting their issues. So when I look at these platforms, I don't see them as a place for black men. It's always been a hostile environment. I mean, it's been that way since 2010. I remember the early days of the first gender war videos, when we started to see black men putting their topics out there, and they just kept flagging those guys' channels down. I remember Dan Freeman, Rick Scorpio, Mr. Superboy, all those guys just kept getting their channels flagged and taken down, and all because you want to see them push one narrative as related to black men. And usually they don't mind having the buffoons and the clowns and the bootlicks on YouTube's platform. And that's why we have to go out here and get our own platform, and like Black Junction, because there is a platform called Black Junction TV, and I have a lot of my stuff over there, but I just don't have enough Patreon donations to be able to pay the $10. Because if I could pay the $10, then I would put more content on that platform. So I always try to put them on other platforms, because I know that the YouTube platform is not black male friendly. It's a hostile environment for black content creators. And it's a hostile environment for other creators, because I've had people from the goth scene had to deal with the exact same thing. They only want to push certain narratives, especially for heterosexual black men. And usually those narratives are being a submissive, effeminate, beta type guy like this, what they call Kevin Samuels, who's been out here for a while. They like those kind of guys, but they don't want to hear hard, straight talk from black men or hear about black men's issues. So
Right.
when I look at things, we just have to find an alternative, because a lot of the other groups that I've seen that were alienated by YouTube, they have left. I mean, I've seen the men going their own way community leave. I've seen the goths leave.
Right.
And even some of the comic book guys are starting to walk away from those platforms, because they say, look, my time is too precious. And if this website doesn't want to host my content, and my content is king, I'm going to take my content elsewhere, and I'll build my audience there. And this platform, if the more social justice content they put on there, they know it's going to fall, because many of the social justice types, the kind of content they put on, it's just very loud, very argumentative, very hostile, and it does not build an audience. And all it's going to do is lead to what many people call the phrase, get woke, go broke.
Get woke, go broke. That is that needs to be trademarked.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
something I picked up from guys in the comic book world. And a lot of those guys, they've seen that these people, these social justice types and these far leftists, what they do is they push their agenda on these platforms, but nobody watches, nobody
Are
listens.
these people powerful? These leftists, like, do they have a lot of money? How are they able to do all of that?
Well, they have an agenda, and what they want to do is some of the corporations back their agendas for pushing things like Alphabet. Some of them like to push their paternalistic views about black people. And they get money to push these things, but the whole thing is nobody watches them. And the whole thing is every place that they go to push their agenda, what happens is nobody watches them. And they think that they
Right.
can just keep pushing their agenda and spend. But the whole thing is there's only so much money you can spend before you start going broke. Because if nobody's watching the content, then it's not driving any foot traffic. And what happens is there's no advertisers who are going to go on a website where there's no foot traffic. So it doesn't matter
Yeah.
how many times you put this type of content on, nobody's watching it. So that's where it comes with the get woke, go broke. You want to push what you think are these woke ideas that are supposed to be so enlightened, but nobody's watching that type of content. So you're just throwing good money after bad. And eventually you reach a point where you are just going to go broke if you keep doing this. And it's something I talked about in a video today where I said, when does a concept, when do you give up on it? Because they had this comic book character called Kamala Khan, who's supposed to be the new Miss Marvel. They've rebooted her comic 4 times, and they're still trying to dump money into her with a new Disney Plus TV series, and the character has just not caught on. I mean, you're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on this character who couldn't sell 10,000 comic books. And that's just ridiculous, because you're going to spend millions of dollars to keep trying to get this character over, but the character just has not connected. And that's what the woke people do. They want to
That's
keep.
like the new Eternals that they try to push with the they try to push the LGBTQ characters, and especially the black characters
Yeah,
that are in it that are gay. So they made that they weren't actually black, but they made the gay character black. Is what I'm so getting at, is that they want to show it. They try to show black, they try to push a alphabet agenda, as you said,
yeah,
but they try to show black people in particular in that light.
yeah.
Uh,
And it's just not selling.
right.
The whole thing is
Sort
that,
of like Black Lightning.
yeah,
Yeah.
none of this.
Although
stuff is moving.
Right. Although, like with Black Lightning, and I started watching. I mean, the girl who played the older daughter. I don't know what you know her character, but I started watching it, and yes, there were some great points in the show, and she's actually a gorgeous woman.
Yeah,
But they made her. I mean, her character from the comics, my understanding is gay already, is a lesbian already. But honestly, I was watching, it's like, damn, that's a waste. Like, she could have been with a man, a strong brother like myself.
yeah,
Uh, you know, and I think she was real hot. Even in some episodes I seen when black men would holler at her, she was real hostile towards them.
yeah.
Uh, so I mean, all of that is design, and it's not just that. I remember you the one that peeped me up on the term sapphire,
Yeah.
and you talked about the characters, the female characters that were on television. What was the name of the museum you went to? Because
That was the Jim Crow Museum. It's a part of a university. I have that website. I got to go get that link. That's a site that really helped me out.
right, and you mentioned even like the everybody Jim Crow Museum of Racist Memorabilia.
Yeah, it's Ferris State University,
Yeah,
and it is a website that has really helped me over the years. I mean, I learned a lot from.
that's in Rapids, Michigan. Big
Yeah,
Rapids, Michigan.
yeah, that website helped me out tremendously when I first found it in 2010. I mean, that website was a godsend for me. So
Right.
I learned a lot about these menstrual caricatures. I mean, that website. So I learned a lot there. So, and it taught me how to avoid certain writing and creating certain stereotypes. So I'm gonna leave a link to that in the chat. That's a website everybody should read and research because it taught me about the Black Brute, taught me about the Sapphire, the Mammy, the Jezebel.
And
All
you said Aunt Esther
yeah,
was a sapphire.
yeah. This is a black woman who goes out of her way to verbally abuse, belittle, and berate and emasculate a black man and strip him of his manhood.
Okay, here's my only thing with it because I enjoy. I mean, look, I enjoy Sanford and Son. Red Fox as Fred Sanford, LaWanda Page as Aunt Esther. They were actually close friends in real life, and he gave her that role, even threatening to walk out.
Yeah,
Let producers put her in. He also helped Pat Morita, who played Mr. Miyagi. He was
yeah.
actually instrumental in that. So it's hard when you say that. I like, where do we draw the line where, well, it's just comedy?
Well, it can be comedy, but the whole thing is that a
Oh,
lot of the comedy we have as related to black people is rooted in a lot of stereotypes because a lot of the white supremacists they push these ideas about black people and we don't know. I mean, I like Sanford and Son myself, but
well, I mean, you can say the same
I
thing about Good Times and even the Jeffersons.
yeah, all those but
I remember
all those shows were created by with the help of white people and they were pushing their ideas about black people. So
that's true too. That's true
So
too.
I don't fault those creators because back then we had no real control over the money and the resources like we had during the Cosby era where we could get a more humanized presentation of black people. I mean
Right.
the 70s was a completely different era, but the whole thing is we have to
Well,
understand that that was a starting point and we just build from there.
well, that started, I believe, because of because
Yeah.
of Lear with All in the Family and Archie Bunker, because Archie Bunker uh, and All in the Family that was based off of Till Death Do Us Part in Britain,
Yeah.
and that character who was a clear bigot and racist of Archie Bunker, he was a groundbreaking character because nobody ever heard someone say terms like that on television, like spear chucker or spick or you
Yeah.
know kike or macro snapper, things of that nature. And honestly, I laughed hard at it.
Yeah, but
Even when
they were
I
making us they were
yeah
laugh, but they were teaching us something about
yeah
how these bigots were and how they were just
right
the joke was on them because they were so disconnected from people that they didn't even see how racist their behavior was.
right, you know when Archie Bunker had Sammy Davis Jr. come over to his house, and he asked Sammy, you being colored, I know you had no choice in that. Whatever made you turn Jew? and Sammy is in shock at what he's hearing. But in the end, he gets the final laugh. He's like, on three, when he takes the picture with Archie. 1, 2, 3, and kisses him on the cheek.
Yeah.
And I think that had like the longest laugh in one of the longest laughs in television history, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But Carol O'Connor, who played that quite well. And I guess since I'm talking about that, because they're talking about rebooting Good Times, and I think you made a comment on it on Seth MacFarlane and Steph Curry are rebooting that.
Yeah.
They're also, I wanted to actually get to this later, but they're actually rebooting. They're in talks to reboot Night Court.
Yeah.
Now, I guess we could get into it because now Night Court was my show back in the 80s. For those who don't know or don't remember, Night Court was an old NBC sitcom in the early 80s, around, I think, 83, 84, that starred Harry Anderson, the late Harry Anderson. He used to be Harry the Hat on Cheers, and he made appearances on Saturday Night Live. He was actually a resident of New Orleans for several years up until Hurricane Katrina, and he passed away, I think, like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But John Larroquette, who's from New Orleans, he played Dan Fielding. And that show used to be wacky, and I liked comedy like that.
It was a surreal type comedy.
Right. I mean, with Bull Shannon,
Yeah.
with Roz, yeah, they don't they don't make them like that anymore. And on top,
No.
Reinhold Weege was the creator of that. He was actually a writer for Barney Miller, which is
Yeah.
which was a funny cop show. But if they launch something like this, I don't know how something like that would work without Harry Anderson. I know John Larroquette was essentially the breakout star on that show.
Yeah.
Because he won unprecedented 4 Emmys, and the only
Yeah.
reason why he didn't win a fifth was because
He didn't want it.
declined. He didn't want it, but he probably would have gotten it anyway. But he's set to reprise his role, and supposedly it's being executive produced by Melissa Roch of The Big Bang Theory, which I was not a fan of. I don't know if you watched The Big Bang Theory.
I used to watch it all the time. I mean, it was one of my regular shows.
Really?
Yeah, because I like the satire they were making fun of with comic fans, and because it was dead on to what I know of what goes on in the comic book community.
I didn't find it funny. I never laughed at it. I thought it was like two broke girls. To each his own. I'm not knocking you, but I
know, but you have to be a part of the comic, sci-fi, and fantasy community to really get some of the jokes, because a lot of the guys who are a part of those scenes, they participate in a lot of that behavior. So it's a very acquired taste for comedy with Big Bang Theory. Because I mean, when I would go to cons and shows, and even when I'm online, I see a lot of guys who act just like Sheldon, and
no doubt.
And I see a lot of guys like Raj, and I'll see a lot of guys like what is it, Howard, and I see a lot of guys like that. So, and I see them online too.
Yeah,
I see a lot of Leonards, and they don't really see how their behavior is messing with them. It's a key thing with that comedy is they're making fun of the situation that a lot of these comic fans are, how they're disconnected from people, and how they really don't understand how their behavior is tripping them up. So that was one of the things that was a part of the whole show, was these guys, they were just so caught up in their quirks that they didn't really see how they were impacting their social behavior.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, to each his own. I didn't even watch Seinfeld, but Seinfeld, they called it the greatest comedy of all time, greatest show ever.
Well, with Seinfeld, you also got a lot of jokes about human behavior, and that one was another one I liked because it had a lot of exploring a lot of the human behaviors and little behaviors that people don't really pay attention to. And it's like one of the tricks of writing comedy is you're making fun of situations. You're not really making fun of people, you're making fun of why they're behaving that way. because I studied comedy for years, and I was a comedy. I wanted to, be a comedian at one time, but then I studied comedy, and I've learned a lot when I was writing scripts for All About Nikki and books like Spinsterella. A lot of people don't know Spinsterella was a comedy about being an introvert. I mean, they look at the goth part, but it really is a comedy about, introverts and the things that introverts do, little things that how sometimes when you're an introvert, you're always overthinking things or overanalyzing things, and how your fear keeps you from really going out and going for what you want. And comedy is something that it's you're making fun of the situation, not making fun of the person, and you're trying to get people to see the lighter side of what this situation is. And what's funny is you're laughing with people about those situations. And shows like Big Bang Theory and Seinfeld, once you start to see the mechanics of it, you start to see the jokes. And I mean, even show like King of the Hill, I didn't understand King of the Hill for years. And then I finally caught what the joke was, and they were making the actual joke that Hank Hill was the alpha male on that show, and he was the leader on that show. He was keeping all the other guys from making mistakes that would destroy their lives.
Well, okay, well, as a comedian myself, someone that has done stand-up comedy,
Yeah.
Your job is to drag people into your world and
Yeah.
uh, basically into your thoughts and make them funny. And of course, they are, Jerry Seinfeld. I'll give credit to something he said. He said comedy is basically a lie with a web of truth spun with a lie.
Yeah.
And what there's some truth to stuff with it, because the dark side of humor is pain.
Yeah.
It's a fine line, and it's two sides to the coin. And but there's different styles of comedy because there are shows that make fun of people. I mean, Al Bundy made fun of the notion of father knows best. Al Bundy was a shoe salesman, a woman's shoe salesman, for goodness sakes, that managed to live in a 3-bedroom home with a lazy wife and idiot kids.
Yeah.
And
Well,
he
the whole, people miss out on the set. They didn't understand Married with Children was a satire. I mean, I
right.
got it.
It was actually entitled "Not the Cosbys." That was
Yeah.
the working title of it. And initially, they wanted Roseanne Barr to play Peggy and Sam Kinison to play
Yeah.
Al Bundy, but they turned it down. And interestingly enough, the person who created Married with Children or co-created was a black man by the name of Michael Moy.
Yeah.
Right, Michael Moy and Ron Leavitt were the ones that created that. And but Al Bundy, I used to love watching him. I loved watching on Fox, of course. When you mentioned Seinfeld, when Fox broke out with their shows, they basically had Black Night on Thursdays because they had shows like Living Single,
Yeah.
Martin at one time, and Living Color.
Yeah.
Though in Living Color used to come on Sundays.
Yeah, I remember those days. That was I
Yeah,
put my schedule around those.
right. And Keenan Ivory Wayans was initially going to reboot In Living Color, but he stopped because he felt that it wouldn't survive in this climate. So when I see shows like Night Court being rebooted, when I hear, which was a hilarious show, I even heard of Martin possibly being rebooted. Different shows are getting rebooted on some sorts. It's happening all the time. I mean, a few years ago, remember Dallas had a reboot.
Yeah.
Uh, which it just didn't work out because Larry Hagman had died.
Yeah. Dallas was a product of its era, and that was one of the problems with that show reboot, because the 80s was a completely different decade than today. I mean, I look at a lot of 80s shows on networks like Cozy TV and other platforms, and people did things that these woke types could not handle. I mean, and when I think about a show like Night Court, I mean, that show was politically incorrect and to
All
the
the way.
extreme. I mean, that show was
I mean,
raw.
Dan Fielding would be Me Too.
Yeah,
Maybe.
that show
Yeah.
was raw. I mean, it was uncensored. I mean, they made jokes that today, if you put them on YouTube, they would probably terminate your channel. And many of these woke types, these SJWs, their heads would explode if they had to hear that type of content. I mean, I remember growing up in the 80s, I was watching a Mr. T cartoon, and I was like, they had some stuff on there that would be considered offensive. I was watching Mr. T on Tubi, and today's people are so soft and so fragile, they
Right.
couldn't handle a Night Court reboot because that comedy is just too raw for people today. And when I think about that show and how edgy it was, there's no way they could bring that back. And then another thing that I think about is two performers practically missing that you would need. I mean, Harry Anderson, who sadly passed away a couple of years ago, you can't do Night Court without Harry Anderson because he had a very strong dynamic as related to
Right.
John Larroquette. He had chemistry with him. He had chemistry with Charles Robinson, and he had chemistry with somebody else who is considered an icon to Night Court, Richard Mall. And you can't
Bull.
have Night Court without Bull. I mean, Bull is an iconic figure. When you think about that show, Night Court, you think about Bull. And now I know about the history of the show because I taped episodes back in the 80s. I don't have the tapes anymore, but I had several tapes of that show, and I know the history of the show and how they lost the older woman who passed away on the show.
Selma, and then they
Selma.
also lost Florence.
Yeah, Selma and Florence passed away, and then Marsha Warfield took over. And I also know about
Right.
the the public defender, Billy, who came before her, and then the other guy, I think was another guy. So they had a lot of cast
Christine
changes.
eventually came.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Marky
Well,
Post came.
before that, a lady who just died, it was a black woman.
Yeah,
She played Liz. She was the public defender.
yeah, she was the first one, I think.
Right.
And then they brought in Billy, and Billy left, and then they brought in Marky Post. So that was,
Right.
and they also don't talk about how that show struggled for the first 2-3 years. I remember the first 2-3 years, that show was at the bottom of the ratings until Cosby came along and it became part of the Thursday block, and that then it became the number 4 show on NBC, and then that led into L.A. Law. So I grew up. That was one of the things I watched as a kid, and
Right.
again, that comedy was super raw, and not even Big Bang
A lot of
Theory
shows,
gets that.
benefited from Cosby on NBC.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers and
was
Night Court.
struggling.
Yeah, Cheers and Night Court were struggling at the time, and if it wasn't for Cosby, they would have been canceled. I remember when Night Court was in the 80s or the 90s, and I also remember when Cheers was in the 80s or the 90s, and Tartikoff was just keeping stuff on the air just to keep the network afloat because NBC was this close to going bankrupt until Bill Cosby came along. I also remember with Night Court, that was a place where Brent Spiner was doing acting before he became
Right.
Data on Star Trek. So there are a lot of
Right.
actors who got their start on Night Court, and they became breakout stars.
Right. Brent Spiner played what's the name of I know the name of them. They were these country
Yeah, it's hillbillies.
hillbillies. Hold on, I'm gonna find it. Yeah, he played. Okay, yeah, of course, he was also in Independence Day, but he started out on Night Court. I remember this exactly. Bob Wheeler, that was it. Wheelers.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was gosh, I mean, that was funny to watch. That was my dad's show
yeah,
because we watched the reruns all the time. I remember when they had, I think their worst episode may have been Attack of the Mack Snacks.
yeah.
But I remember that. And yeah, they carried that show was highly rated for a number of years in the middle 80s. I mean, number 4
Yeah.
show in the country.
Yeah.
And the performance of John Larroquette, because he was so great physically,
Yeah.
for comedy, which I thought was hilarious. But since you brought up Cosby, I guess we can go into that. That's a good way to segue into this. I do want to get your opinion on the appeal. Did you get to see our coverage? I did the coverage on my channel, but also I simultaneously did coverage with Nicole's View.
I haven't seen it yet, but what I did was I read your article, and that was where I came down with my analysis in the video, because from what I read and my own research, I mean, I really think that this appeal is going to go through and Cosby's going to win, because the judges already know that the case is shaky as related to Cosby, and they know that as related to Kevin Steele's unethical behavior, and as related to those witnesses, the case is just, it has to be overturned because the legal precedent that was established is one that is detrimental to the entire country. The whole standard of trust and believe is very harmful to the country because when you have it where we're not under due process of the law, people can just make any allegation and have somebody arrested and tried and convicted for on trumped up charges. And that takes us back to a Jim Crow standard of justice.
Right. Well, I think the other thing too is, and I was pointing to this earlier when I was trying to get your attention and everybody's attention, but when you were talking about social media,
Yeah.
and Twitter, this is a copy of the Constitution. You guys can get it. You can look at it online. I keep a booklet with me, of course, for purposes of looking at the First Amendment. And that's why I was holding it up, because we have something called freedom of speech. And even though Twitter may be a quote unquote private actor, they act, of course, in the interest of the public. And we, of course, have freedom of speech, and they regulate, certain things, especially now since we're in the digital era, how important freedom of speech is.
Yeah.
But what I want to but in relation to that with Cosby, when you read the Constitution, Amendment 6 clearly states that in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have his compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. So the key word in that, though, too, there's a couple, but an impartial jury. How can you have an impartial jury when Kevin Steele campaigns in that district that if you elect me, I'm going to get Bill Cosby, and say that he committed all of these crimes? When you have a judge that's allowing outbursts in front of the court, outside the courtroom. Remember the actress who actually was on a Cosby show that had her titties painted and jumped out at Bill Cosby while he was walking? That bedwench, I don't know her name, and she's not even worth even being named, but she was clearly paid to do that. That was all in front of the jury, all the protest that was going on, even in the trial with the witnesses making those outbursts, should have ended in a mistrial. The fact
Yeah.
also that this case, we go to the Fifth Amendment, and it talks about no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in case arriving in the land or naval forces or in the militia. This is basically no person, nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Now, the Fifth Amendment, when it talks about due process of law, that deals with the federal aspect of it, whereas your 14th Amendment, which was designed to give Black citizenship, that's actually what it was created for.
Yeah.
That deals with the due process of the state. How did Mr. Cosby get due process? And the Supreme Court Justice I believe his name was Justice Baylor, if I'm not mistaken, he said himself that, I believe your client, he told Bogine, who was the defense attorney, Catherine Bogine, your client didn't get a fair shake.
And he definitely did not get a fair trial. I mean, when you look at the evidence, I mean, his Fifth Amendment rights, his 14th Amendment
The
rights.
prosecutor promised not to press charges. Yes.
Yeah. And that sets a bad legal precedent because in other cases that the state gets people to turn state's evidence, they can't trust the prosecution to actually go back against them. So
Right.
This whole thing what Kevin Steele has done has practically put the whole court system in jeopardy and practically if this verdict stands, other people can actually now come out here and file suit against the state saying, hey, you use this evidence against me, and it can lead to other people being
Well,
cleared, and they don't see the dangerous legal precedent they're setting.
the dangerous precedent, though, that has been set is, and
Yeah,
even one of the justices asked this is a prosecutor's word not does the prosecutor's word mean anything?
yeah,
Because you're talking about, well, they didn't have it in writing. They didn't have it in writing. Agreements don't have to be in writing. If you in Louisiana, we have something called detrimental reliance, where
yeah,
if you promise somebody, you call it promissory estoppel in common law states.
yeah,
But if you make a promise to someone and they rely on it to their detriment and they fulfill an obligation, the courts will hold you legally accountable to oblige and fulfill that obligation. So, what will happen at best, uh, well, at best is that they will grant the appeal and they will grant it based off the Fifth Amendment option, which means that under that Fifth Amendment issue, then Cosby's case not only will it get overturned, but he can't be prosecuted again because he has immunity if they find that.
yeah.
If at worst, well, at worst, of course, they could just not, they could uphold it where the
Well,
way it is.
but that would hurt a whole bunch of other cases, especially
Well,
cases with
but but
organized
that's
crime.
that's the worst. But that's the worst. The middle part of it, and I guess a good scenario would be is if they overturned it, where the with regards to the prior bad act witnesses, which
Yeah,
would mean the sentence would be vacated, conviction would be vacated, but he could still be face another trial, which I don't think they would bring another trial forward because the money that it would take to prosecute it again, the fact that this DA got exposed and humiliated, it will likely force him out
yeah,
of office because people, I believe, are waking up realizing how bad this is. And these idiots on Twitter, like the ones I was arguing with, and the idiots who run Twitter, you all should look at that and look at the fact that you had someone making spilling these false allegations and lies about Cosby, and then attacking others for telling the truth and calling what the way we saw it.
yeah.
The facts are the facts. He's not convicted of that.
No,
So he wasn't convicted of a rape, just like Al Capone. Like I said, never convicted of murder.
nope. And that's a historical fact with Al Capone. And if you keep saying those type of statements, you might actually get sued for libel, and that's something. Well, but some people say, "Oh, social media, you can't be sued and stuff like that." But the whole thing is, you're pushing a lie that is maligning this man's reputation, and there was never any charge as related to rape, so you cannot say he was
What?
convicted of anything because
Let me go ahead, finish, Sean.
there was never any charge as related to rape, and you
Yeah,
can't say that he was convicted of that. And I hear a lot of these white racists and white nationalists and white supremacists
I see a lot of
pushing,
coons saying it too.
yeah, a lot of these black bootlegs, and they're pushing something that when you look at the record, you go, that's not never was part of the case. And the whole case itself was based on a malicious prosecution. And I believe Bill Cosby could also sue the state for malicious prosecution because this man intentionally ran his whole campaign on prosecuting Bill Cosby. And again, that's very unethical. And that's something I would say that the Bar Association needs to deal with as well, because this man running on that is malice of forethought. And a prosecutor is supposed to be objective in presenting the state's case. And it's not supposed to be him presenting his feelings and his opinions. He's supposed to be representing the state and representing the state's interests as related to about the prosecution of this individual and proving that they did what was alleged as related to these
Well,
charges.
right. Well, even more than that, I'm looking at some of the comments. My man Justin McCorkle says, "Out or not, the damage is done. Our community took the bait, hook, line, and sinker." He said, "Good point, Sean." Uh, Justin, of course, is Omega, which is Bill Cosby's his frat brother. Uh, but the damage has been done. But the thing is that we here are the ones that can repair that damage.
Yeah,
You see, it's not the battle is not over.
No, far
A
from it.
battle may have this is a war that you're fighting. There's a difference between a battle and a war. A battle is just a part of a war.
Yeah,
But we're at war right now, and more people, and even people who don't like Bill Cosby, are even waking up, realizing, you know what? He didn't get a fair trial. I saw DL Hughley, and DL, of course, has been hell of uh, critical of Bill Cosby. He doesn't like Bill Cosby at all. But he even was on Vlad saying that he thinks, and I don't watch Vlad, but he thinks that Cosby should be let go because of the COVID pandemic. But that's because when you see DL Hughley or Earthquake, or even Marshall Warfield made some comments about Bill Cosby. I don't know if you heard about that, Sean. Hell, even Sinbad and
yeah,
Lunel, and I could go on a whole list. That was because they had a personal issue with Bill Cosby.
yeah,
They had something against Bill Cosby because Cosby said was critical of their comedy or critical of Def Comedy Jam. But Bill Cosby wasn't the only one critical of Def Jam. Bill Cosby wasn't the only one critical of Eddie Murphy. Lucille Ball didn't like Eddie Murphy.
yeah,
Rodney Dangerfield criticized Eddie Murphy. He told Eddie Murphy himself, "Kid, you got to watch your language. Watch your language. And then when they were at the Caesar's Palace, and he saw Eddie Murphy headline, and he's using the urinal next to him, and Rodney says, "Hey, who knew?" You know, uh, he wasn't the only one. And from what I understand, what uh, Bill was really trying to talk to Eddie about was being careful about how he brags about his money,
yeah,
because he didn't want him to get robbed or be a target.
yeah,
I mean, I listened to Keenan Thompson, who I don't think Keenan Thompson is that funny. He's been on Saturday Night Live for damn near longer than anybody. He's practically got the same job. And remember, he went at Cosby. He's talking about how Bill Cosby told him a dirty joke. It's like, well, you never heard a dirty joke from your grandfather before?
yeah. I mean, in the comedy business, you're gonna hear those type of jokes, and it's just part
Right.
of business.
Right. I mean, hell, I've seen unedited episodes of the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, where he was doing a satellite stream, and Johnny Carson let loose. He was telling a lot of jokes that were not going to be on television.
Yeah,
He would be fired if he had said, well, I don't think he would have been fired, but he certainly would have had to pay fines for the stuff that he said, because it's unedited, the things that were on there.
yeah. But the comedy world is a raw world, and
Right.
I mean, some of the stuff that Eddie was saying was pretty raw for the '80s. I mean, and the '70s. That was like you didn't really. I mean, before then you didn't really hear too much profanity. But if you watch something like Eddie Murphy Raw, or you watch something like Delirious,
Yeah.
he took it
Delirious, raw.
he took it to another level. And I thought a lot of other '80s comedians, and it was a really raw period. I mean, a lot of people don't understand how raw the '80s was. People were dropping f bombs and all sorts of stuff,
Right.
and people weren't even phased. I mean, kids were
And I
going to
mean, he was a
R-rated
rock
movies.
star. Yeah, he was a rock star I was born in '86, so
Yeah,
I don't remember early '80s Eddie, but I remember late '80s Eddie, and that era. And even as a kid in the '90s, when you would see his movies, we had Coming to America and Vampire in Brooklyn. The brother was a genius. The brother, I mean, we used, his comedy, the stuff he was saying. Nobody was talking like that at that time. And uh, Eddie changed the game. Chris Rock even said he was the rock star of comedy in the '80s. He was selling out Madison Square Garden and the Superdome. He was packing these arenas, and for the '80s, that was unheard of. Back then.
yeah. I mean, Eddie Murphy was a phenomenon when it came to comedy. I mean, nobody was like Eddie back then. I mean, he revolutionized comedy to a
Right.
whole nother
And the
level.
difference between him and Richard Pryor. Now, somebody said this. I think it was I can't remember who it was, but I think it was Dr. Thomas Bird. Doctor, yeah, out of UCLA. I think he's with USC, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
he said that the reason why Eddie got compared to Richard was because he just cursed a lot. But if you took Richard's comedy out, I mean his language out, the jokes were still funny.
Yeah,
Uh, but Eddie, something that Eddie did that was different than Richard was that Eddie was allowed to be brave
yeah,
in his movies and in his stand-up.
yeah.
Richard Pryor damn near was a coward in the
Um,
movies that they had him in. Like worst movie he did, and I didn't even know it because as a kid I thought it was great, was The Toy.
yeah,
Uh he was in Superman 3 and a lot of people criticized him for that, but he made more money than Christopher Reeve in that movie.
yeah,
Uh you know, and those are things that people I think keep forgetting. This man, Bill Cosby, getting back to Cosby, he broke barriers. He was also, when you talk about trying, Justin wanted to talk about on this alleged network that he was trying to buy, and Northern Bell mentioned this. Yeah, well, back in the 90s, and you can go look this up. There's a New York Times article that was printed in 1992. Bill Cosby did try to acquire the National Broadcasting Company,
yeah,
NBC, after the Cosby Show had aired. He was doing some syndicated programs like You Bet Your Life, and uh, there was a few other shows like he had the Cosby Mysteries, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah,
Those didn't, and those did not end on a great note. And he tried to acquire it. From my understanding, from what even press his press agent, his spokesperson, Andrew Wyatt, said the head of CNN now is Jeff Zucker. He was also the head of NBC. They had uh, a war of words.
yeah,
They didn't get along with each other, and Zucker supposedly says that he was going to do everything in his power to destroy him. And of course, you had that hit piece, The Case Against Cosby, that Don Lemonade uh, narrating was part of, because they were all part of it. And I don't know about you, Sean, but I don't watch CNN or Fox or anything like that, CNN in particular, because I find that they push a certain agenda. So if I want my news, I go here online to look at
yeah.
things. I go
I don't go to any of these networks because it's all propaganda and they contradict it themselves right there on the newscast. So when I looked at the whole Bill Cosby
and
NBC thing,
also
I
I'm
mean,
sorry.
I was thinking about the Bill Cosby NBC thing. I mean, he practically saved the network, and if he had bought the network, he probably would have
Right.
made it in a better place. I mean, what I find to be sad is you got Jeff Zucker, who, as I see it, was practically riding on Brandon Tartikoff's coattails because Brandon Tartikoff was the one who brought Cosby in, and he was the one who practically saved that network from going under. And he's talking against Cosby, but if it wasn't for Cosby, he wouldn't have a job in the first place.
Right. NBC would have been bankrupt. I mean, Cosby should have his own plaque
Yeah,
or statue inside Rainbow
inside of
Studios and
Rockefeller Center.
yeah, inside of Rockefeller Center or inside Rainbow Studios where
Yeah,
NBC uh, originated out of, because he saved it.
yeah,
He literally saved it from bankruptcy. They had no hit TV shows. Not only that, he saved the sitcom
yeah,
genre. Uh, Keep in mind, in that time in the 80s, as you know, everything, as we talked about, was dominated by the soap operas or the action series like Magnum PI,
yeah,
uh, Dallas. They had The Love Boat. All of those shows were killing NBC in the ratings. The only thing NBC had was Different Strokes and The
yeah.
Facts of
That's
Life,
all they had.
and maybe give me a give me a break, but it wasn't that strong of a program until Cosby came along. And when he came along, then all of the other networks decided that they could actually have a show centered around a black family, a la Family Matters,
Yep.
a la the Fresh Prince of Bel Air. That opened the door for Living Single. I, I have my issues with Cosby and how he criticized young black men with some things because, and even he admitted when he did the pound cake speech that he was wrong for making he generalized everyone, basically saying, he grouped everyone in that category. Although I had an idea of what he was talking about, it was just how he did it that a lot of people had issue with, because Dr. Randy Short talks about it. But I wouldn't dare just because I disagreed with him. I would not call that man a rapist just because I don't like him. That would be like if I called Roland Martin uh child molester because he's an asshole.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that because I've had my issues with Roland, but I would not accuse him falsely of something that I don't know anything about. And I think most people just went around saying all of this stuff because, like DL, like uh who else? I even had issues with Paul Mooney's sons.
Yeah.
One of them started talking about how he raped, Bill Cosby raped a friend of his, but then his daddy, Paul Mooney, got accused of raping Richard Pryor Jr., which which I even doubted because of the timing of it all. And the guy who said it is trying to sell a book.
Yeah.
So I so I I'm just careful with my words when I accuse someone because I wouldn't want to be accused of something I didn't do and have a bunch of people accuse me of something without proof and without evidence because that's a
Yeah.
horrible thing.
And usually you want to have stuff substantiated when you go out here and make a claim. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I use the word alleged in a lot of my videos, because you don't want to come out here and say that, because that can be used as slander and libel, and you really don't want to make statements unless you can substantiate them or prove them, because you're going to malign somebody's reputation like that.
Yeah, well, that you malign their reputation, you put yourself in danger and
Yeah.
jeopardy for either slander or libel suit. Of course, a defense to that would be the truth. I'm not giving y'all free legal advice, but and this doesn't create an attorney-client relationship, just to be clear. But that is, defense to slander and libel is the truth. But none of that has been proven true. There have been allegations, and actually, most of them has been documented. All of them didn't go to the police immediately, supposedly, when this happened, or even if they did go, they did not find enough evidence to warrant bringing any charges.
Yeah.
So I'm skeptical of that. And then also, you got to take into account, too, Bill Cosby is also fighting with this oil company that's trying to put a pipeline through his property in Massachusetts. Kinder Morgan is supposedly fighting with them, and is fighting with them and other neighbors. And Camille Cosby actually wrote an article back in May of 2014 where she condemned them. Uh, they've been fighting with them, and supposedly, I believe this was Drew Story News who mentioned this, that the CEO of that company or someone powerful that worked there made a comment saying that they could get a celebrity to they can bring down a celebrity there just like that if they wanted to. Something along those lines. I say allegedly because I don't have the official quote in front of me, but I know the damn thing. I know they talked about it before because I've heard the damn thing said, and I believe Drew was the one who mentioned it in Nicole's simulcast.
Yeah.
So that stuff has happened. There is such thing. Look at how they treated Sam Cooke. Look at how they treat these black musicians. If you read the book, the FBI's long war against Tupac Shakur
Yeah.
and other black entertainers. I mean, it's clear that these men were spied on. Jimi Hendrix, Sam Cooke. Have you ever seen the Sam Cooke documentary? I want Shawn or heard about it.
Haven't heard about it and I haven't seen it, but I definitely will, because I think about the tragic way he passed, and I definitely want to take a look at something at that.
Well, yes, everybody could look at the documentary. Of course, everyone talks about the two killings of Sam Cooke that are on Netflix, but the one I am talking about that goes more in detail is the documentary called "Lady You Shot Me."
Yeah.
I did a live stream this past Friday about Sam Cooke and Otis Redding's passing. That because they died in mysterious circumstances. But what was
Yeah.
interesting is that they were all both trying to they did create their own music publishing.
Yeah.
They wrote their own songs and material. Otis was actually in the process of creating a record company and a publishing company along with James Brown. And before he could do that, he dies mysteriously in a plane crash. The only survivor, who died in 2015, couldn't even swim. and he was found 20 minutes later. So that whole thing was just very suspicious. But Sam's
Yeah.
death, Brother Ron Hurd goes more into depth with that. But Sam Cooke's death was the one, and you go back and look at my last video, Sean, if you want to check it out. But
All
that's
right.
the one everybody should pay attention to because the whole story didn't even make sense of how
Yeah.
he died. Yeah. So you want to say something, Sean,
No,
right quick?
I don't need to say anything. I mean, I'm just listening to you. That's all.
All right. And so, with that said, I want to move on quickly because I don't know if you got to run, but I don't want to keep you too long.
All right.
But I did want to talk about well, it's actually one thing right quick. Megan Thee Stallion and Cardi B were honored. Megan Thee Stallion, of course, talked about how Maxine Waters wrote her a letter of thanks for all the work that she has done, praising her. Cardi B, of course, she won uh, Billboard's Woman of the Year. And I know you have been critical of uh, these women in the past, Sean,
Yeah.
uh, in particular. But what does this say? What I want to ask you is, what does it say about Maxine Waters, because and the people that reelected her? Because I'm at this point, I'm not shocked that they use celebrities to push their agendas and so forth. But just what are your thoughts on it?
I mean, it sadly it shows us how your Maxine Water has been bought and paid for, and how she is out here really not working for the best interests of Black people, and how she's really just loyal to the white supremacists out here. I mean, she's looking like a modern day mammy out here, going out here giving an award to a woman who promotes the Jezebel narrative and elevating this narrative, this type of imagery that presents a negative image of Black women. So when I look at Maxine Waters, it's deeply troubling to see this so-called accomplished Black woman elevating a image and a narrative that tears down our sisters. But it's
Right.
something. It's like something I
And her
talked about.
district is horrible.
Yeah, but it's something like I talked about in a live stream last week. I talked about what I call the I got mine FU mentality that a lot of baby boomers and some of the silent generation types have. And your Maxine Waters has the I got mine FU mentality, where she believes that since she's got her congressional district, she's got her money, she's got her house, she's got her retirement, she's not thinking about the impact on the next generation or thinking about teaching and preparing the next generation for something better. In her mind, she got hers, and now she could care less about the next generation. So all she's thinking about is getting some change from these Hollywood types. She doesn't think about how her role was to prepare the next generation by presenting them with positive images of Black women so that we can get another generation of sisters out here who can help build with other Black men. As long as she's got hers, she could care less about the next generation. And that's something that a lot of baby boomers and a lot of some of the silent generation, they have this mindset. And it's very detrimental to Black people when you have people with that mindset, because they'll sit there and they'll promote negative images of Black people, negative narratives about Black people, because in their mind, they've got theirs, they've got their money, they've got their house, and they don't understand that if you don't help the next generation, they're not going to care about your legacy. And what we're seeing, like in the case of Charlie Rangel, another guy who had that mindset, your district will be taken from you by other groups. And we see it with South Central and other areas. They take what you have, and you have other people taking it because you didn't teach the next generation what was valuable or important. And her elevating these dysfunctional females, that's something that's really sad, because, you know, you should be wanting our sisters to do better. You should be wanting them to establish a standard for Black womanhood, because these same women say they can't find a man, but their behavior is one of the reasons why many of these Black women are single, because they think that they can do these behaviors like these white feminists talking about how they're so empowered. But many of these men, they don't see these women as wives. They just see them as basically prostitutes. And when you promote prostitute culture, you're promoting something that's going to keep women single for the rest of their lives.
Well, you mentioned Charlie Rangel, young man. I did a lot in New York for black people. As Senator, as Representative Charlie Rangel, I take umbrage at what you say. Umbrage. Charlie Rangel. Yeah, I've heard stuff about him.
He didn't groom another guy to take his place,
He
and
wasn't Adam
Hispanics.
Clayton Powell.
Yeah,
Adam Clayton Powell did stuff for people, but Charlie Rangel, I guess you could tell me about him more in New York, but you're saying he didn't groom.
he didn't groom anybody to take his seat, and now a Hispanic guy, Espiat, has that seat. And usually, when these other politicians, they groom somebody to take their place so that they can
Yeah.
continue getting their agenda being pushed once they leave, and their community can continue to get resources from the government when they leave. Charlie
You,
Rangel got his and just left, and then
that's
Espiat
right.
took
I
over.
left. I left you. What are you gonna do? Boo, boo, boo. Yeah, that's kind of like but I mean that relates to I don't know if that was a good impression of him, but that relates to like Maxine Waters, uh the getting reelected again, the Maxine Waters and Cedric Richmond and
Yeah,
the lady, I'm not gonna call her sister, but the lady who Corey Bush, I believe,
yeah.
that ran. Yeah, and there you look at their platforms. I'm talking specifically about. I'm talking specifically about the let's say Maxine Waters and their platform. Like they pushing everybody else's agenda, but their own people. But we keep reelecting them over and over again, and there's no accountability. This has basically become a career
Yeah,
for them. Sort of like with Vlad TV, how Vlad basically has made a living off of blacks, off of hip hop, off the culture, and Negroes are not taxing him to the game. They're not taxing him, and they get upset about the stuff he says about Farrakhan and the way, a lot of people that be going on Vlad that go on his television show, for instance, they end up getting with some type of charges or something happens to them. But why do we keep? But I look at that. It relates to Maxine Waters. Why do we keep reelecting them over and over again?
well, the big problem with a lot of black people is that they are complacent and they're codependent. And the codependency is where they think these people have power over them and they don't really understand the power that they have as related to politics. They think that because these white people pick these politicians, they have to vote for them. And they don't, and because they think that they have to vote straight down this Democratic ticket because these evil racist Republicans are going to destroy things if they don't vote for them. So what happens is these people start to, in their codependency, start to become complacent, and they just vote for these people thinking that they're going to act in their best interest. But
Mhm.
if you didn't pick these politicians, then they're not going to act in your best interest. Every other community out here, Latino, Asian, Indian, Arab, I mean, even whites, they go out here and they pick their candidates. They go out here, they use their voting block to get those people voted in. And then those people, either if they don't bring the tangibles back, they get voted out. So
Right.
usually what happens is with black people, that when a white person trots out a candidate like a Barack Obama, or they get a shill like an Oprah Winfrey to trot out a candidate like Barack Obama, they become spellbound because they create a covert contract where they believe that if they go out here and vote for this hand-picked black candidate, they will get social brownie points with white people, and then they'll be able to get support from that white person or approval from that white person. And instead of them voting for tangibles, they're actually voting for social currency. And this is how these people get voted in again and again and again because black people are voting really for social acceptance and they're not voting for tangible resources. And
Sure.
meanwhile, this candidate is getting a kickback, as I see it, in terms of money and earmarks for keeping the black people complacent.
Right.
And that's how the codependent cycle works. But we have people trying to break this cycle, but it's a tough road because a lot of black people, they aren't really politically educated. They're not really politically aware. And what happens is a lot of black people, they keep voting for these candidates, not understanding we didn't pick these candidates. These candidates don't represent our interests. These candidates don't support a black agenda. And outside of their black skin, there's nothing really black about them. They're basically, as I call it, chocolate covered white people. And they're just there to be tokens to do whatever their slave masters tell them to do.
Well, without a doubt, that's true. But I want to point this out too with regards to Cardi B as well. She was honored with an award,
Yeah,
and she was presented with that Billboard Woman of the Year award by Breonna Taylor's own mother. And she supposedly clapped back at haters who said, "Why is she getting an award?" She said, "Good night, Northern Belle. I think she's leaving."
yeah,
But she said that I represent America. You know, we talk about Bill Cosby. Let's not forget that she admitted to doing the things that Bill Cosby allegedly did or
yeah,
supposed to do to women. But there's a double standard, a clear double standard where that's ignored or that's even praised because they call it hustling.
yeah,
And she had to survive on the streets and actually had trannies rape these men. Just I'm
yeah.
going by what she said. So what does that I mean, what does it say about Breonna Taylor's mom doing? Like, why would she do that, and why? I guess probably there's some browning points that she's getting, or I'm sure they're giving like a she gets more recognition by making an appearance like that, and I guess more exposure. But I'm just trying to figure out, and I'm not gonna lie to you, because I'm not prudish. There's music, some of the music I do like.
Yeah,
Uh, some stuff I like. I mean, I look. I'm a straight man. I like seeing women shake their ass. That's.
yeah.
I'm not gonna lie to you and say be approved, but I also know what the game is and what's going on. But why is uh, your well? Let me just get what your thoughts are on her being awarded, uh, Sean.
I'm deeply disappointed that she was rewarded for that because when you promote that type of culture, what is that going to, how does that affect our daughters? And that's something people aren't really thinking about. I mean, when you reward a woman who went out here and basically promotes prostitution and promotes exploiting and taking advantage of men, what type of message does that send to our young daughters about womanhood? And this is something people aren't really thinking about as related to this promotion of Cardi B and people like Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion. When we promote this type of behavior, it's really going to have an impact on our young girls. And instead of them thinking about trying to be a respectable young woman who's going to be a wife, you're setting them up for a road to failure. And that road to failure is going to lead to them either becoming single moms or they're going to wind up becoming one of these what I call 70% chronically single black women who say they can't find a man because they've bought into these twisted feminist ideologies that have them believing that this is empowerment, but these women wind up alone and miserable. I mean, we're not really thinking about the long term as related to how this is impacting our young daughters because a lot of people have this I got mine, F you mentality. And to hear Breonna Taylor's mom being out here, handing this woman an award, that's really troubling because a lot of people allege that Breonna Taylor passed away as a result of being a part of this drug culture and this prostitution culture. And it really, again, this is all about promoting stereotypes about black women, but most black women really aren't aware of how these stereotypes negatively, adversely affect them because they're not really knowing much about the Jezebel stereotype or the Mammy stereotype. They're not understanding that this is what they're trying to do is push this on the black woman. Meanwhile, they go out here and they make positive images of white women, and the white women are not following any of those narratives whatsoever. They'll push that on black girls, and what that does is has black girls headed down a bad road, and they're thinking they're doing something empowering, but what they're doing is heading down that road to becoming one of these chronically single or one of these single moms. And all they're doing is playing right into the hands of white supremacy, which wants to see you miserable and below the white woman instead of being elevated to a strong position where you're supported by a black man.
I'm Sean. Excuse me 1 second. Sean, give me 1 minute and I'll be
All
right
right.
back. Something came up. Apologize for that.
Oh, that happens.
Yeah. Butterfly 70 says that Brianna wanted to be a doctor. She was EMT that loved helping people who were sick. Uh, Talking about Brianna Taylor.
Yeah.
I think what Shawn is getting at is, of course, is that there have been rumors of, well, not rumors, but there have been statements circulated across social media on the internet, especially by the rednecks or by uh, ultra right wing uh, extremists, the loonists who say that, well, Breonna Taylor wasn't a good person and she was tied up in drugs and so forth, and that's why that happened. I don't subscribe to that because I don't know that information. I do know about the boyfriend, uh, the ex-boyfriend being involved and, well, not being involved, but she was with him and so forth beforehand. But the bottom, but I think what Shawn is getting at, what he's trying to say is that don't play into their hands.
Yeah.
Hip hop has a negative connotation already with it about the thug culture, the negative images that they promote towards about women and they talk about that already, but yet they find this thing empowering where you have someone like Cardi B who gets awarded for stuff and is also admitting to crimes that admitting to crimes she committed uh, when she was coming up. And I guess, we're marketing her as, our Billboard chooses her as Woman of the Year. I think that's what a lot of people find hypocritical about it, or are saying is hypocritical. So I can understand that. And the fact that Breonna Taylor's mom was brought out, I guess, to present that award, that feeds into a lot of questions. Remember when Michael Strahan interviewed the cop that shot Breonna Taylor? One of the first things he said when he talked about the George Floyd incident, he stated that, well, I wouldn't have handled it that way, but what I would say is George Floyd was not a good person. What did that have to do with George Floyd being killed? His criminal record and history, they didn't even know about it when they stopped him. So they bring it up and they're like, to slander people. But of course, I heard that information has been circulating about Beyonce that was dating people like that. And I mean, it's true that happened. But of course, that doesn't justify her death in any way, shape, or form. Nor does George Floyd's death.
Yeah.
But yeah, but appreciate your thoughts on that, Sean. I'm going to be winding it down a little bit, but I did want to get your comment. Two things on this. MLB announced, I don't know if you follow baseball, but they are formally acknowledging um, the Negro Leagues as part of Major League Baseball. Of course, was you talking about that? That was done earlier this week. I find it interesting they did that right after former Negro League baseball player and country singer and star Charlie Pride passed away from complications of COVID. But these were the Negro Leagues. They were actually even superior to the Major League Baseball at that time. It existed from 1920 to 1948, and you had all of these you had black owners of these franchises that gave in to the MLB when they let Jackie Robinson be drafted into the Brooklyn Dodgers. And baseball is still technically segregated now. There are not a lot
Yeah.
of blacks that play. I'm not saying that they don't play baseball, but Butterfly says my mic is messing up. Can you hear me well?
I can hear you well now. Before it was a little wonky.
Yeah, but now they're allowing uh, they'll be included in the game's official statistics. So back then they did not include the Negro Leagues players statistics. Those that got drafted. Uh, yeah, actress Carol Sutton passed away. Yeah, I know she goes to my family church. I love you too, butterflies. Uh, Rosalind, yeah, Carol Sutton. Carol Sutton's from New Orleans, so
Yeah.
I know of her. Yeah, she goes to our church. She did go to our church. Excuse me, family church. Uh, Black players were adopted
Yeah.
church. So black players were barred from MLB play, depriving many baseball fans from seeing some of the best hitters, pitchers, and fielders of the 20th century. Uh, and so now they are letting this in. Rob Manfred, the MLB commissioner, said, all of us who love baseball have long known that the Negro Leagues produce many of our game's best players, innovations, and triumph against a backdrop of injustice. Of course, Jackie Robinson was in the Negro Leagues, but also you had uh, even the great Hank Aaron, Henry Aaron was part of the Negro Leagues, as well as Willie Mays and Charlie Pride and a few others who started out there. Um, Sean, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I'm glad that the Major League Baseball is finally acknowledging all the Negro League teams, and I'm very happy to see these talented players finally get the recognition that they deserve. I mean, many of the Negro League players were, as you said before, even better than many of the Major League players, and many of the teams were a lot stronger than the Major League teams. And it's a shame that we waited nearly a century to give many of these talented players the recognition that they deserve. I mean, these were some of the greatest players, and it was one of the greatest leagues of baseball. And I'm finally happy to see those players get the recognition that they deserve from Major League Baseball because these guys were icons as I see it. And I'm glad to see them finally being given that their due. And I'm finally glad to see them finally being acknowledged for the brilliant talent that they had over the years.
Right. Well, of course, I'm happy for those people. Carol Sutton, Far Side, is an actress. She was actually in This Is the End. She played the angry cashier that had the air conditioning unit fall on her, and she was in a couple of other shows. But Butterfly said they should bring it back. It's not going to happen.
No, not in today's Major League Baseball because we don't have the players. I mean, the
Well,
last
we don't
time,
have the players, but also I think because we're not mainstream,
yeah,
black people always we've had the unconceived notion, sadly, that the white man's ice is colder.
yeah,
And to a degree, while that may be bad, it's also correct in the sense that they have more resources than what we have,
Yeah,
and
and
we're not unified.
and there's also another point. I mean, a lot of black players are not really coming into baseball anymore. I mean, we back in the '80s, you had a lot of black men wanting to play baseball, but a lot of black men they see bigger paydays with basketball and sometimes football, but they're not really going over there because you have to go through the farm system, and it's an easier road with the NBA where you don't even need to where all you need is a high school diploma to enter the NBA because LeBron entered the NBA with a high school diploma, and some guys enter the NBA with less than 2 3 years of college, and you can get into the NFL fast as well. So Major League Baseball, it sometimes you have to wait years to go through the farm system,
Yeah,
and a lot of the ball players they're saying, look, I'd rather just play basketball and football where I can get these paychecks early, and
like
I
Patrick Mahomes.
yeah. So that's one of the things that I remember when I was watching baseball with Darryl Strawberry back in those days. I started to see
Right.
a lot of black players walking away from baseball because of the farm system and how long it takes to even get into the major leagues because you have to go through triple A, double A, and then single A, and then it's a long road, and people just they're like, I want to get paid because you don't really get paid on those farm systems. You
You know,
sit there for years, and you're losing time as related to your career. So a lot of guys they're like, I don't want to do this. I'll just go here and play basketball where I can possibly get lottery picked in the NBA, and I can start making money, or I go to the NFL and I start making money,
I can get
and
endorsements too.
yeah,
I get
yeah,
more endorsements. Yeah.
make it. That's
Uh,
why they do it.
right. Uh, so yeah, that's very much true. Last thing I wanted to talk about, though, of course, was about, and I put this up a little too soon, but Mac Daddy Biden. I should have started this earlier, but I wanted to get your thoughts. I call it Mac Daddy Biden because we talked about uh, the phone call. I did a live stream about it, the Zoom call that Joe Biden had with the leaders, and we were talking about them earlier. But of course, Mark Morial, Al Sharpton, um, I believe, yeah, Cedric Richmond was also on that call, and some others I can't name, where Biden flat out told them what they weren't going to do, what he was
Yeah,
not going to do. And he has a history of being condescending. He has a history of talking like that. And he talked like he was at a debate rather than at a Zoom meeting. But when I heard it, I honestly laughed at it because this is what you were getting, this is what you expected.
yeah.
But what are your thoughts on it? Because there are people that are still defending Joe Biden even after that. And if you give me your 2 cents on it.
Well, what's sad about that situation is it showed how codependent some black people were because they just sat there and let this man condescend to him. And what's really sad is they didn't really even see how they had leverage on the table because when I looked at that situation and the way they were talking, Joe Biden was talking down to those black leaders, they had leverage because those two Senate seats were up for grabs. And they could have easily said that if you don't give us what we want, we're going to make sure that you don't get those votes for the Senate and you're not going to be able to flip the Senate. So you're sitting there wanting to talk down to me. You don't understand the power the black vote has because it was the black vote that put you in the White House. And it's the black vote that can keep you from being able to further your agenda. Because if you don't further our agenda, we're not going to support your agenda. So a lot of the black folks there really didn't understand the power they still had on the table, but that's because they had a codependent
I think
mindset
they
coming in.
understand. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think they understand. I just feel that they just don't want to do it.
Well, they're too scared to stand up, and the whole thing is you can't be afraid to stand up because, as I see it, if you really want this Senate, then you're going to have to give something to get it. I mean, Hispanics, Asians, they're all going to tell them, look, if you want
Right.
this, you give me something.
And he brought up Hispanics at that meeting. He said, look, they're going to be the majority in this country. what will really happen is that the United States will no longer be a majority white country. Is going to have Hispanics will be they're already the number one leading minority. They have outbeaten blacks as far back as the early 2000s
Yeah,
when we started losing leverage, especially with illegal immigration.
yeah,
But uh, that was being allowed, and we're being pushed into a further underclass because Biden has stated he's going to grant amnesty to these illegal immigrants, but also they want to help uh, Indian Americans come in with H-1B visas. They will outnumber blacks in 20 years.
yeah. But that what's going to happen is with Hispanics right now, they're already seeing the fragmenting because many of the Hispanics see themselves as one, white, and two, you're starting to see a lot of them vote Republican. So a lot of the
Right.
Democrats thinking that, oh, we're going to have this Hispanic base, but that Hispanic base is becoming more and more conservative with each passing day. And when it comes down to the Indian community, they are just exploiting America for its resources. They use the H-1B visa to get money, and then they go out here and take that money and build their own country and own infrastructure at America's expense. So this is all going to backfire very nicely on many of the whites who have this idea. I mean, they think putting blacks are in a permanent underclass, but the minorities that they're trying to bring in to replace blacks have agendas of their own, and those agendas may undermine all their plans to keep blacks as a permanent underclass because they're not interested in being an underclass. They're interested in empowering themselves, and they're interested in taking power for themselves. So they're thinking, oh, we're going to replace them, but nobody has the codependent mindset that black people have. And if black people got out of the codependent mindset, they would be a formidable force politically.
Yeah. Well, Al Sharpton, he's not no leader.
No,
I don't. He's what Ron calls the cooler.
yeah,
Brother Ron Hurd calls him the cooler because he comes in when the block gets hot and cools everything down, telling black people, "Oh, don't do that. You better not do that. You better not do all of that." Remember, even when Michael Jackson was in
yeah,
Harlem, we've done a video before about it because Al Sharpton was tied with Donald Trump, but also
yeah,
when Michael came to Harlem to protest Sony and Tommy Mottola, Al Sharpton told everybody to ignore what Michael was saying about Tommy Mottola.
yeah.
So and that's part of the clip there. I don't know if you want to play it right quick, or I could just play it briefly. I'll
You
play
don't
it.
have to, you don't have to play it. That's all right. I know all about Michael Jackson and everything with
No,
Al
no, no,
Sharpton.
no, not that. I'm talking about the Biden clip.
Oh, okay. I've seen the Biden. I watched it. The guy sent me a link to it. That's why I was able to make the video about it. I watched it in its entirety.
Well, for those that didn't hear it,
All right, you can
I'm
play
gonna
it.
play it. Let me know if y'all can hear it when I play it. Okay.
All right.
Can y'all hear?
Can't hear it yet.
Oh, you can't. Okay, hold on. Hold on.
Authority that my progressive friends
Let me
talk
rewind
about.
it.
I'm not going to hesitate to do it. But what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to do what used to, Benita, you probably used to get angry with me during the debates when you'd have some of the people you were supporting said, on day one, I'm going to executive order to do this. Not within the constitutional authority. I am not going to violate the Constitution. Executive authority that my progressive friends talk about is way beyond the bounds. And as one of you said, maybe you, Reverend, now, whether it's far left or far right, there is a Constitution. It's our only hope, our only hope. And the way to deal with it is where I have executive authority, I will use it to undo every single damn thing this guy has done by executive authority. But I'm not going to exercise executive authority where it's questioned, where I can come along and say, I can do away with assault weapons. There's no executive authority to do away with that. And no one's fought harder to get rid of assault weapons than me.
And that's bullshit.
But you can't do it by executive
A
order.
knife is an assault
If
weapon.
you do that, next guy comes along and says, well, guess what? By executive order, I'm going to say everybody can own machine guns again.
Okay, so that was the clip.
Yeah.
Of course, people may say, well, it's edited. You know, it's not, that's not the whole thing. Well, I listened to the whole thing too. A lot of people broke it down and it was actually worse than that.
Yeah.
Than that clip. And what I would say too is that, well, first off, even on an assault thing, if you go weapons thing, if you go to Biden's website, I've told people about this. He makes it very clear that they are opposed to they're opposed to the Second Amendment. There's no question about it. The things that they want to implement, like being only allowed to buy one gun a month. Well, first and foremost, how are you going to do that? Because that's unconstitutional, number one,
Yeah.
not just the Second Amendment, but also to the interstate commerce clause as well. People have a right to shop. They have a right to buy. It's going to hurt the gun industry. It's
Yeah.
also, you're talking about assault weapons, banning assault weapons. A 9mm can be an assault weapon.
Yep.
A handgun is an assault weapon. A Virginia Tech killer used James Bond's gun, Walter P2K, to kill several people. So he's clearly he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. He's not going to be running the show. I think Pelosi is going to be running the stuff. But
Yeah.
but back to, I guess, the original point, what we talked about, and I called him Mac Daddy Biden. You notice too, they're starting to bring Barack Obama out more and more,
Yeah.
and cycle him out. Also, the other presidents. You know, I don't know about you, but I really get tired of seeing them. You know, I really don't have too much to say about President Obama because he keeps shaming black men. He finds a way, which is something he's always done, I've noticed. And I don't care out there who doesn't like what I'm saying. You know, I've had friends, I don't know about you, Shawn, but I've lost friends over this election
Yeah.
because they love uh, Missy. They love Missy Kamala. They
Yeah.
love Madam Kamala, and they love Uncle Joe.
Well, they love them because it's all part of that same codependent relationship black people have with white supremacy. I mean, the Joe Biden represents the slave master, and Kamala Harris represents the light-skinned black woman that a lot of black women want to covet their beauty. So a lot of people, they are spellbound and they're caught up in the codependent relationship they have as related to what they've been conditioned to with white supremacy. They
She's
see
an AKA.
they see Joe Biden as the great white savior, and they see Kamala Harris as the great light-skinned, beautiful black woman whose beauty they covet, and they don't even understand how they've been manipulated by
Never.
these stereotypes, and their votes have been manipulated by these stereotypes. So I saw what he was doing because I understand how team white supremacy works. And the reason why he picked Kamala Harris really was because he knew it would get him the votes of black women, because he knows that black women really covet the beauty of these biracial black females, and they covet the attention that they receive because they have a covert contract where they think, oh, if I accept this biracial person, I'll be able to get the attention of this white man. And you also had a lot of black men who went out here and voted for Biden because, again, they're caught up in this great white savior thing. So I could see the codependent old slave mindsets with Joe Biden. And this is what's happening. People, they just went back to the plantation because they thought it was a safe place. And that's what happened with the whole Joe Biden thing. Now, I heard Kamala Harris talking about how she wants to do gun control as related to background checks and weapons. And I said to myself, you know, and when I was doing my research for the man crisis, I found that most of the mass shootings took place during the era of the assault weapons ban. So that shows that the whole gun control argument is a complete failure because we saw the greatest rise in mass shootings during the era of the assault weapons ban and we saw more people participating in mass shootings. And that was all due to, when I did my research, the rise of feminism that the left created and the rise of the single parent household. So the single parent household is what they don't want to talk about, that created, all the gun violence, because the gun violence comes from the single parent household. And it's not about the guns, because in the 50s, we had gun training classes when
You have
fathers were
more
in the home.
access to guns then.
Yeah. I mean, we had a lot more access to guns, but we had low crime and low violence because the father was in the home. So that shows me that it really wasn't about the guns. It was really about the rise of the single parent household, and the single parent household has created these impulsive beta males, and these beta males are the ones who commit a lot of the crimes and a lot of the violence.
Yeah. Well, what we're witnessing though now, I think a lot of people, is a perfect textbook example of reaping what you sow.
Yeah.
Because people did not want, everything was, we got to get Trump out. We got to get Trump out. He's bad. He evil. He racist. He Trump. He Trump. That. And while I have my issues with Donald Trump, uh, a lot of stuff that Trump was doing, he was not targeting black people
No.
specifically. Uh, unlike Joe Biden, where he has targeted blacks specifically with his policies that have had a direct impact on us.
Yeah.
Trump was not doing that. And, a lot of people, they still think, I still find, I don't know about you, but a lot of people feel it's hard, still think that there was some type of finesse with the election because Biden didn't have as many people at his rallies, and he's not a polarizing candidate.
Yeah.
Captivate you. But a lot of people suspected that they stole, I saw Brother T. West's analogy on the election. He brought out, he said there was voter fraud. I I personally have not looked at all of it. I've heard what has been said, but you think there was such a finesse, or if I could ask you?
I doubt that there was any finesse. I think that it's just people were mentally manipulated. A lot of black people were mentally manipulated by their codependency. And a lot of people were terrified by this pandemic, because when I look at the way America voted, it was primarily, I think, based on emotion. And a lot of the emotions were running high because we have people who are unemployed. We have half the country out of work. We have a lot of black people who are struggling. We have a lot of people all over across the globe struggling. And when you have an election where people are struggling and people are desperate, they will go with somebody just to get some sort of stability. It's similar to what happened in Germany with when the rise of Adolf Hitler. People were so desperate to get out from under the oppressive system, things that were going on as related to the economics, and they wound up voting for Adolf Hitler because he promised them some sort of relief. And when people are mentally manipulated, they run on emotion without thinking critically. And that's what we saw with this 2020 election. I don't think the election was rigged in any way, shape, or form, but I think people's emotions were manipulated. And because they were running on feelings and voting on feelings, they were not thinking critically about who they were voting for. And that's why we've got a lot of people now with voters' remorse, because they voted on emotion, thinking that a vote for Biden would lead to some sort of change, but they didn't understand what they were changing from, because they thought the orange man was so evil because propaganda and the media told them he was so evil. But we all know that a lot of people don't know that they were just going from the frying pan into the fire with Joe Biden.
Well, I will say this too, though, about that, because I sit down and talk all the time. Judge Joe Brown has talked about it. I mean, I remember those states initially being red, and then all of a sudden the counting just stopped, which is something I've never seen happen before.
Yeah.
And then in Georgia, when they said there was a pipe that burst while they're counting the ballots, it was just, I found it very interesting. But you know, they have rigged it now. They have rigged elections before. They do it all the time.
Yeah.
They did it in 2000. I mean, that was clear when they gave it to George W. Bush over Al Gore. Everyone knows Al Gore whipped George Bush. But then again, Al Gore couldn't even carry his own home state of Tennessee.
Yeah,
Which
but
was, yeah,
the country's been in decline ever since that election. So we
yeah,
really have not been in a good direction ever since. I mean, I always saw 9/11 as the thing that broke America's spirit, and I always saw COVID as the thing that is practically, after breaking the spirit, is starting to tear at the soul of the country. And we're in a bad place right now because the country is not in a good place, mentally, physically, or emotionally. And if they keep going on, I just don't see America holding out much longer.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's a good point, man. That's a damn good point. Let me see if we got any other comments. Of course, we got people watching on Facebook. We got people watching on YouTube. Uh, you guys hit that like, share, and subscribe button too, especially if you are new to this channel. Some people I don't recognize, some people I do. If you're, please donate to the Cash App. We have Brother Shawn James on. Y'all check out his books, The Man Crisis, as well as Eternal Night, Why 70% of Black Women Are Single, and the John Haynes series, The Man with Nothing to Lose. That was his latest book on the John Haynes
Series.
series. Before you go, Shawn, because I know you've been here for a while, I don't want to keep you too long, and I really appreciate you coming on here talking with me. I do want to make this lighthearted. Of course, this is Christmas, and Christmas is actually next week, Christmas Day, Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
And I said I was going to bring this up, and Shawn, for being the movie buff that he is, uh, he's only seen. You don't watch Christmas movies too much, from what we've talked about, but you've only seen, of only one that you've seen, which is the original Miracle on 34th Street.
Yeah, I've watched Miracle on 34th Street and It's a Wonderful Life, and I don't know if you could constitute Die Hard as a Christmas movie, but that's about it as related to Christmas
What about
movies.
Lethal Weapon? That's a Christmas movie.
I haven't seen. All I saw was the first one of that one.
Well, that first one was a Christmas. The first Lethal Weapon
Oh,
that was set at Christmas.
but it was like several. It's been years since I've seen it. It's like, but I have watched a couple of them here and there, but I don't usually watch too many of them because I'm too busy preparing for the holidays. I'm so busy, especially these days. It's like I'm working like I was working back in 2000, early 2000s with AmeriCorps Vista. I mean, I used to have time for movies, but I don't have time anymore. But I have the only ones I watched again because every year my family watches Miracle on 34th Street every year. That's the movie we watch all the time, and my brother likes It's a Wonderful Life, so we watch that one. But
That's in the public domain.
yeah,
Well, let me just tell you some Christmas movies that I like. The original, I do like the original Miracle on 34th Street. That was with Edmund Gwenn, who played
yeah,
Santa Claus. He won an award for that. The remake, the 1994 version, which Richard Attenborough played Santa, actually came on today, and
yeah.
I watched that as well. Uh, but I like to look at um, Home Alone. I, I'm surprised you didn't even mention Home Alone, that you saw that.
I
Uh,
was into black movies back then when that came out. I mean, I was watching.
well, even Home Alone 2, because that was shot in New York. Uh,
I have not seen that. I mean, the '90s. I was so busy focused on school. I mean, I barely had time for much of anything. I mean, I remember watching Ninja Turtles, the first Ninja Turtles movie, but that was about it. And I saw a movie called Warlock. It was a horror movie back then, but that's about
I
it.
remember that. Yeah, Warlock.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was scary. Rosalind says National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Home Alone. Let me just give you a rundown of my movies.
All right.
Of course, I got to do a top 10 later, but Christmas Vacation. This is not in any particular order, but Christmas Vacation, um, A Christmas Story, which is the BB gun, Ralphie,
Yeah.
uh, Elf. Uh, I do like watching Home Alone, the Home Alone 1 and Home Alone 2. And I also like a movie that an old Disney movie called One Magic Christmas. A lot of people may not know that, but One Magic Christmas was a Disney movie that starred Mary Steenburgen, and it used to come on regularly on basic TV on ABC and so forth every
Yeah.
Christmas. Hallmark used to play it, but they don't show it anymore. Far Side X is Soul Food a Christmas movie? I don't think so, but I do like. You should check out Almost Christmas with Danny Glover and Monique. That was pretty good. I like that to watch that as well. And This Christmas that comes on regularly, which are two black Christmas movies. So y'all should check those out. But top well, Christmas songs that you like, Shawn, or albums that you play during this time. That's what I was really going to ask you.
All right. I play Nat King Cole's Christmas album. That's the one I have mostly, and I play other ones. I mean, have a Shirley Caesar Christmas album we play all the time around here, and there's a couple of other ones. I just pick up songs random here and there
So
on the
that's
radio.
Shirley Caesar. That's just gospel.
Yeah,
Christmas.
yeah, she had a Christmas album.
Okay, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. She's been around for a while. Kirk Franklin has a Christmas album.
And there was Mariah Carey Christmas I listened to too.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I
And sometimes I listen to Michael Jackson, the Jackson 5 one.
What about the Temptations?
I haven't heard theirs. I heard one or two songs on when I go into a store here and there, but
Yeah, they have a Christmas. Well, I mean, even their Silent Night version.
yeah.
The Silent Night. Rosin says Motown Christmas songs. Yeah. Their version of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. I love. Uh, I used to see as a kid. I mean, I still do. I love Christmas, and
Yeah.
I listen to the music. I'm embarrassed to say this, but even as a kid, or maybe not, even when it wasn't Christmas, I would even listen to it just because I loved it. Kept me in great spirits. But uh, I love, yeah, Nat King Cole. I think he has to be number one because he actually paved the way for black artists to
Yeah.
have Christmas songs now. That song, the Christmas song, is actually, I think, one of the most performed Christmas songs of all time. Is the most performed Christmas song at Christmas time.
Yeah.
Uh, and he, is written by two Jewish songwriters, Mel Torme, who was a jazz singer, and Robert Wells. And a lot of people don't know most Christmas songs are actually, a good number of them, the most popular, written by Jews. That's just a very interesting thing I found that was ironic. But
That's very interesting.
Nat King Cole, Mariah Carey, Motown Christmas album. I used to have that. I also had the Time Life had something called Soulful Christmas, where it was various artists that I would listen to, Brooke Benton and Ray Charles and James Brown, Otis Redding's Merry Christmas Baby. I love listening to that, and countless others. So, and I have Aretha Franklin's last Christmas album that she did for Borders, which was pretty good. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I heard some of them, but I haven't. I just hear songs here and there because I'm just so busy sometimes. So I need to listen to more, Christmas music. But during the holidays, I'm just busy because this is my busy season. I mean, this is where most of the people buy their books. So I'm so busy focused on trying to get the holiday promotion
That's
rate.
Jake Claus.
Yeah, it's hard work. So
Yeah, I know it is, man. Push them books.
yeah,
Well,
because this is when people buy them.
Yeah, and I guess they would make great stocking stuffers like Eternal Night and Eternal Night and the John Haynes series. Far Side says Johnny Mathis, I believe, makes great Christmas music. He does. I play his albums too. I forgot about him. And I'll even say this: I even like Sinatra. I'm not afraid. I actually like some things Sinatra and Cosby did. Crosby. Bing Crosby. But Sinatra actually, the reason I like Sinatra too was that he didn't tolerate a lot of racial shit. He was responsible for desegregating Las Vegas and threatening to fire the entire staff if they didn't let Nat King Cole sleep at the Sands Hotel, sleep and eat there. So, yeah. But yeah, those are all classic. Roslyn says, I think I'm one of the few who like the Disney's A Christmas Carol shoes with Jim Carrey with mocap animation. Yeah, I thought that was good. It was kind of like the Polar Express. I thought which is great. And you guys should check out the Polar Express ride. I don't know if they're doing it with COVID, but uh, that was fun to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Shawn, I'm not going to keep you because I actually have Santa Baby Eartha Kitt. Yeah. This Christmas, Donnie Hathaway. But I won't keep you, Shawn, because I know you've been on for a while, and I don't want to keep you from any other work you have. But if you want to do a plug-in,
All right.
go ahead.
Well, you can pick up many of the SJS Direct books, like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, and the John Haynes series, and the books of the Spinsterella trilogy on Amazon.com right now in paperback and Kindle format. They're great all ages reading, so you can give them to your kids. And they're the kind of books you can feel safe about giving to your kids. I'm going to leave a link to where you can get all my books in the chat. Most of the books I produce are family friendly, like the ISIS and the E-Steam series and the John Haynes series. So all those books are very family friendly. They're great gifts. And one of the books I'm producing right now, E-Steam Blast from the Past, has a bonus free E-Steam comic book, No Good Deed. So you definitely want to pick that one up because I'm getting ready to try to branch out into comics. And you can see what an SJS Direct comic looks like in the back of this story. So Blast from the Past is one that you definitely want to pick up in paperback and Kindle format because it has that bonus comic in the back. And that's a great holiday gift for the fantasy fan in your life. So definitely want to pick those up. Those are great gifts for the kids in your family, or if you want to treat yourself to some fun African-American fantasy, you can head over to Amazon.com and get all those books over there.
Shawn, also tell everyone where they can find you, follow you, like your social media platform.
All right. You can find me on Twitter. I'm going to leave a link to that in the chat in a minute. Okay. Let's see. Where am I? Okay. You can follow me on Twitter. Follow me at Twitter on Shawn S. James. You can also find me on Facebook. As Shawn S. James. I'll leave a link to that in the chat. And you can friend me through Facebook. And you can find me there. You can also find me on Instagram, where I'm also SJS Direct America. So usually there's just pictures of stuff over there. You can find me there. And you can also find me on YouTube on the Shawn James channel. And you can find me on the Shawn James channel with YouTube, and you can find me there.
Most definitely. I was just sharing this video on with some of our friends so that they could check this out because we had great conversation tonight. Far Side remembers the movie One Magic Christmas. That's great. You guys, if you want to support me, because this is I know it's the Christmas season, and I'm trying to avoid the naughty list, but right now Twitter is on my shit list. So I would ask you all if you want to continue to see me, because we're gonna forget Twitter. I don't need them. I'm actually considering dropping my account highly just as a result of this, but you guys can support me here on YouTube. And I'm actually have issues with them. But please drop something in the Google Pay. You see the ticker at the bottom. Also, the Cash App, Gavin Richard Esquire, if you want to support me. You can also support me at Gbutu786 on the Patreon if you'd like to be a patron subscriber, because I like to make more videos on Patreon if I had more followers that were there. And that way I can upload content that I know won't be censored, that I know I can express myself. I won't have to deal with this crap because it's not worth. I mean, it's always worth getting the information out to y'all, but it's not worth my time arguing back and forth with someone and with an organization that clearly shows a disdain for people with for other people's opinions, people with my thoughts and views, especially when we're trying to espouse black black masculinity, black in economic empowerment, which is something that they clearly do not like and know very little about. So, guys, that's it. Shawn, I want to thank you so much for being on here. Again, maybe we can do another show next week if you have time.
Hopefully.
Yeah,
I just want to thank you for having me on.
no problem, man. I appreciate it. You're always welcome. You are. Everybody likes you. Everybody likes when we come on and talk. It had been a while, so we would do.
Yeah.
If I do not hear back from you, and I doubt that, but I want to say it in front of everyone here and all of you all. If I should do another live stream, but Merry Christmas
Right, Merry Christmas to you too.
and Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you.
All right, man. And I'll
Right.
talk to you later. Oh, one more thing. How are things in New York now with Cuomo and the New Year's Eve?
It's getting kind of tense because a lot of people, he's threatening a lockdown again, and a lot of businesses, they're on the brink. They're afraid of losing everything that they've got. So it's getting really tense over here, and because a lot of people have a lot to lose, and a lot of these politicians aren't really paying attention. They're so busy trying to one up each other in their so-called attempt to protect people. They're not thinking about people's rights, or they're thinking about people's livelihoods, and they're pushing people towards what I call the nothing to lose stage, because a lot of people have lost practically everything and they're not thinking about what people need. I'm going to talk about that more in a live stream tomorrow. Is America a nation with nothing to lose? Because I see a lot of people, they're frustrated because the government really isn't thinking about them. They're just caught up in their ideals, not thinking about the real people.
Yeah, most definitely. The government does not care about the people, although supposedly represent the people.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's something that they forget that that is a fundamental principle of democracy, or really a republic, because the United States is a republic. Uh, Guys, that is it for me. Have a safe, happy holiday, Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Hanukkah, all of that good stuff that you follow, that you love. Season's greetings. Uh, I have some business ventures that I'm doing too. I'm actually, you guys will hear more about, but I'm starting a seasoning company. I'm also into some doing some music that's going to be dropping soon, and you guys will love to hear all of that. So I'm out, guys. Have a safe day. I love you.
All right. You
Peace,
have a great day
everyone.
too. Great day
All
too.
right. All right, Shawn. See you, man. Great stream, great talk.
All right.
Peace,
Thank you.
guys.
All right.
All right. This has been another edition of Gavin Reshaw Presents here on channel G Bluetooth 786. I'll holla.